Federal government has clarified there will be no immediate enforcement of the 5% fuel tax. Now, this comes as the Trade Union Congress issues a 14-day ultimatum warning of a nationwide shutdown if the surcharge is introduced. Now, Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, explains that the levy, though captured in the Tax Act, cannot take effect without a formal commencement order. He further emphasized that the tax reform efforts were not just about imposing new charges, but about fostering an environment where business can thrive and contribute to the growth of the Nigerian economy. Now, joining us via Zoom from in our Abuja studio is finance analyst Olusegun Elemo. Good morning, sir. How are you doing? Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
Thank you for having me. Good morning to you.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yes, I can hear you. Good
Thanks
morning.
for joining us. Now, this conversation has been on the forefront. You know, a lot of people have been talking about it. A lot of comments on social media as well about it. Now, we're hearing the federal government saying that it will not take effect now, but until further notice. And Nigerians are saying that whether now or till further notice, is it not still going to affect Nigerians? Another question that was asked is it necessary? You know, we're reading the papers this morning and, you know, we see a public figure had said that, you know, it's for the betterment of Nigerians. But Nigerians are not understanding why, if this tax is imposed, it's also going to hurt them. So from your own point of view, what do you make of this? You know, it's not going to happen now, it's going to happen in the future. At the end of the day, what does it do to the common Nigerians?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. A lot to unpack in the questions that you have asked. Whether it is necessary, I think I would say, whether it's necessary to improve revenue, absolutely, it is necessary. If you have a budget of more than 50 trillion, certainly you want to ensure that the revenue sources, you know, are effective and you are able to cover, you know, all your, you know, expenditure obligation, including that of debts and debt services. So to that extent, it is necessary. But it's important also to put a background to this issue that we're dealing with, the fuel surcharge, which of course goes on petroleum products, including diesel as well. I think there's a bit of a lack of adequate knowledge here. And I think the chairman, Presidential Task Force on tax and fiscal policy, Mr. Taiwo Edele, you know, tried to provide some clarification to this. And like you mentioned again, the Honorable Minister of Finance yesterday also commented on it. This is coming from a background of the FEMA Act of 2007. If you recall, the Federal Roads Maintenance Agency Establishment Act was first enacted in 2002. It was amended in 2007. In that amendment, you would see that in the new section 14 of that act, it was provided that the fund for the agency, that is the Federal Roads Maintenance Agency, would come from certain streams. And you have about, you know, 9 streams in which the funds for the agency will flow. One of those sources to fund the FEMA, as you would see in section 14, sub 1H, is the 5% user charge pump price of petrol and diesel, of which, you know, 40% of the total accrual from that source will go to FEMA, and 60% will go to equivalent of FEMA at the state level. So that is the distribution pattern, you know, for that particular surcharge. I think it was on the back of the Obasanjo administration having demolished the toll gates, if you recall, at the time. The toll gates having been demolished, it was designed that a new source of revenue will now be used to maintain, you know, the road infrastructure, federal roads as well as state roads. And that was why the FEMA Act was amended in 2007 and this user charge was introduced. Albeit, the FEMA Act, that particular provision was never implemented. And again, this is a consumption tax. And I would say that when it comes to consumption tax, I think that the rich in our society get away with a lot of things. You would expect that a 5% surcharge at that time would have been implemented, having demolished the toll gates. I'll give you a typical scenario. You see, the toll gates sort of unify taxes across borders. So if you have a poor person driving through the toll gate, he pays the same fee as the rich man. But having demolished the toll gates, you now have a situation where consumption tax on petroleum products is now introduced, which means that if a rich man owns a 5-vehicle convoy and uses 500 liters a week, you will pay 5% on 500 liters. And sadly, it cannot be the same as a motorbike rider who possibly maybe use maybe 10 liters a week. So that consumption tax, sort of is a leveler. But you can see why he was never implemented, because the rich always gets away with a lot of things. And that's why recently you see that there was a senator, I won't mention the name, who appeared to have paid maybe a paltry sum of 100,000 as personal income tax. You can imagine what an absurdity that a senator of the Federal Republic would pay 100,000 or less than 100,000 as income tax. And you saw what happened in the UK just a few days ago, where a senior government official was caught, evading taxes. She had to resign. But it doesn't happen in Nigeria. So those are the issues. And I think that is why Nigerians are bothered that, yes, you had this in the FEMA Act, was never implemented, but now you've put it in the new Tax Administration Act. But again, the minister has provided clarification that it will be delayed. So that's it.
Yeah, when you say it will be delayed, everybody is thinking maybe it will take effect from January 1st, And question people are asking is that, why are we talking about this now that the economy is taking blows, uppercuts from all directions? Why didn't we talk about this or implement this when the economy was better? Why is it so necessary that we do it now? Because it will definitely affect a lot of things. Mr. President is trying to bring food prices down. He has given a matching order to bring food prices down. And we're still talking about a 5% surcharge, a consumption tax, like you said, that, yes, might benefit, might get the rich people paid a little bit more. But at the end of the day, it's still the regular Nigerian that will bear the brunt.
Well, the reason why it has to be done, I'm not providing justification for why it should be done. In fact, if you ask me, we should just halt the implementation of the user charge, the surcharge for now. Because like you mentioned, people are going through a lot at the time. And I mean, the president saying, giving a matching order, I listen to it. But I don't think, crashing food prices is not a word of mouth. These are economic activity that are subject to various economic manipulations and indices. Yeah. So for food prices to crash, it's not just about the president giving an order. It's about certain fundamentals being in place. You need to look at the supply gap and then the demand as well, and then see our level of production, whether we're importing or we're producing locally, and that's how to deal with food prices. But on this issue is that, yes, we need to halt it for now, but certainly it will be implemented. And the reason is because we're not doing very well, again, as much as we used to in terms of oil revenue. The president also made comments recently about non-oil revenue doing well. And part of that non-oil revenue is also, taxation. Everywhere in the world, yes, you will need, taxes to fund, government obligations. So there's no doubt about that. How the taxes will be implemented, if you ask me, is that if we were a country driven by data, you would easily protect the vulnerable away from this user charge, for instance. I mean, you are not going to be targeting, for instance, a a public transport person, or maybe an Okada rider in a local parlance, for instance, for this user charge, this 5% user charge. If you had a country which is driven by data, you can literally protect, for instance, the Okada rider, the public transport people away from this user charge. All you needed to do is to, for instance, provide a voucher for them monthly, and then they can use the voucher in filling stations and buy the petroleum products, and they don't have to pay the 5% charge. Yeah. The people you are supposed to be targeting are people who are up the ladder, who drive convoys, who do all of that. Those are the people that get away, with the subsidy. For instance, the subsidy was on for many years, and you realize that the subsidy was not, providing any relief to the common man. Was rather funding, the exorbitant and the opulent lifestyle of the rich. And that's why I'm happy that the subsidy has now been removed, so that, you have a lever. But I think with this user charge, what you need to do now is to work with state government, provide vouchers, for people who are vulnerable, so that they can still go to the petrol stations and still buy without paying the surcharge. Why the rich then, of course, they should and they must.
The subsidy removal, even if the revenue is material, public trust after the subsidy removal is actually low. And then now introducing a tax that looks like more pain to the Nigerian people is something that's one of the reasons the union is kicking. Do you feel, because opponents are also saying that another fuel levy will push inflation and hit poor households, which you've referred to. In what other ways would you like to expatiate for us how you think the federal government can do this? Because they say paying tax is something that is very, very beneficial to the growth of the country. So what exactly can they do to, that will make it look more like progressive rather than, retrogressive, to protect the vulnerable Nigerians? And if that's the case, how would it look in practice?
You see, let me tell you something, right? The reason why you have, low public trust is because the government is rather focusing on one side of public finance management. You see, you cannot have a budget, for instance, without have the expenditure side and the revenue side. How you are all about the revenue to fund the budget, but what enhances public trust actually is when you use the money efficiently and effectively. And if there are no mechanism on the ground to ensure that public monies are utilized efficiently and effectively, you are going to have this kind of trust deficit where you then introduce any levy or any whatever, and people just get upset, with that policy. Today, as we speak, you don't have a modern audit law that will ensure expenditure efficiency and effectiveness. For instance, today, the report of the Auditor General for 2022 is not available. It's not been concluded. 2023 is not been concluded. 2024 is not been concluded. You now, in 2025, we're winding down 2025. How does that sound to a common man? Because those are parameters, those are mechanisms that ensure that public money, over 50 trillion in 2025, have been expended efficiently to benefit the average Nigerian. If you say you're going to build roads, if you say you're going to construct schools, if you say you're going to enhance hospitals, those are areas that the average Nigerian is going to benefit. They don't own private jets, they don't drive convoys, they don't, so those are the things that goes to them. So if they don't see that, they are certainly not going to be happy with the government. And this does not just apply to the federal government, it also applies to state government. Many state governments today, even though they have modern audit law, but you rarely see the report of the Auditor General. What does the report of the Auditor General do? It tells you how monies allocated earlier in the year have been expended and whether, there've been value for that expenditure. So, and that's what enhances public trust. So you cannot be clever by half. Like I would say categorically with the federal government, you cannot be clever by half pursuing revenue and ignoring expenditure. I'll give you an instance. The report of the Auditor General on the account of the Federal Capital Territory is nowhere in public domain. You can check it. It's nowhere in public domain. You don't, I mean, for all the years, I'm not exaggerating, you can go online and check it. We have written letter to the Honorable Minister. We have even written to the Auditor General for the Federation whose mandate it is to audit the accounts of the FCT. Nobody's providing feedback on how FCT have expended money in the last, say, for instance, 5, 6, 7 years. So it's not just about this government, but I'm saying we are not accountable. We need to be accountable to the people that put us in power. Of course, I'm not a public officer, but I'm saying those in public office, they should be accountable, and that's what enhances public trust. And when they see that, you know, it is evident that public office holders are accountable, when you then introduce this kind of taxes, nobody complains because we get value for all the taxes.
Indeed, Mr. Lemo, well spoken this morning, and I quite like your passion on the matter. But let's get back to something you said a bit earlier. When you began conversing with us this morning, you talked about that if this tax was implemented at the time it surfaced up a few years ago, it would have been a leveler between the rich and the poor. The question I want to ask is, what makes it different now if it eventually is implemented? Will it still be a leveler?
No, it will level, right? It will level, but because of the the economic situation right now, disposable income have been eroded largely. Eroded, but people can even barely feed, 2 times, even 1 time a day. So it will level a little bit because it's a consumption tax, and consumption, tax on consumption is dependent on how much you consume. And you certainly cannot compare someone who is just going to power a small generator to power, to run a barbing salon or a hairdressing salon, or an Okada rider who is just going to move, commute around. You can't compare those with people who drive, for instance, V8 engine vehicles of about 5 to 6 vehicle convoy and all of that. You certainly cannot compare that. But what I'm saying is that because the income of these most vulnerable people have also been eroded, I think my thinking and my policy suggestion to the federal and state governments in this regard is you can go ahead and implement, but protect the vulnerable. And how do you protect the vulnerable? Make sure that the implementation is data-driven, identify all the people that will be impacted, categorize the most vulnerable, and provide, for instance, vouchers to them. And with that voucher, monthly voucher, they can go to the petrol station and use that monthly voucher to buy at the original rate without any tax at all. While those who don't need the voucher, who are up the ladder, will just drive in and buy with the surcharge, included in their own bill. So, so you can actually proceed to implement it. There's something, but the problem is that we always don't protect the vulnerable. And that is why this same, user charge was never implemented in 2007 to date, because we don't always protect the vulnerable.
And I love the fact that I think what you just said about the voucher makes a lot of sense. At the end of the day, the masses will still be able to, get fuel, but then they are not paying, the people that are driving the V8 and everything. And, you just spoke about it. Driving just a normal car and driving a car that takes a lot of money, takes a lot of fuel is quite different. But what I want to speak about are some things that you said. You spoke about accountability, which is something that I feel like, is lacking. And then again, you said something about people evading tax. Over a period of time, we've had a lot of conversations about it, about some Nigerians, I don't want to say all, but about some Nigerians not even paying their tax. Now, these Nigerians that do not pay tax at all, they are still talking about this increment, but they are not even paying tax at all. I just want you to highlight on us that what are some of the reasons we can put together to make sure that Nigerians understand the importance of paying tax? Because if you really look at it, some economies thrive really well from taxpayers. At the end of the day, it seems like we do not understand that this tax money is for the betterment of Nigeria, it's for roads, it's for infrastructure. So how do we make sure that people even pay tax? And I tell you something, Mr. Lemo, some people that have never paid tax before are still criticizing this particular 5% that they want to add.
Of course, they have to, so that they don't have to pay tax. I mean, if they don't criticize it, so what I'm saying is, the taxes, has it ever been about development? That's a question we want to honestly ask ourselves. If, for instance, you haven't used the non-taxes in a way that shows that you are about development, how do I then trust you that you are going to use my taxes, developmentally? So those are the things, and I think that this trust issue is a two-way thing. You want me to give you money that I earn and pay taxes, but you don't want to be accountable. So
Mr. Lem, I'm going to cut you short here. I'm just going to cut you short and say something. So are you saying that, people do not really want to pay tax because they feel that the government is not using the money for, the infrastructures? Is that what you're saying?
You see, taxes all over the world, you are compelled to pay tax. It's not a suggestive idea.
Of course.
You're not going. In other countries, it is criminal not to pay tax.
Yeah.
Yes.
But also is that the other side of it is that it is also criminal not to use public resources efficiently and effectively. And I think that's the thing. So people understand that they are supposed to pay tax, and government is not supposed to negotiate how it goes about to collect all the taxes, but be accountable to how you use the money. I think that's the most important thing. And like I said, the mechanism for accountability as we speak today is lacking. So you have instruments for collecting revenue. We've just harmonized all the taxes, tax laws. It took us, less than a year to get all of this sorted out, right? I think that it will do us good as well. Yeah. If the federal government today can send an executive bill to the National Assembly to say that we want to modernize our audit law so that as we are getting revenue, we are also assuring Nigerians that we are using the money in the most efficient and effective manner. Yes, if the federal government sends an executive bill today to the National Assembly, I bet you that executive bill will not last a month, and it will go back to the president for assent.
All right, I understand what you are saying is, let there be, once the people trust the government, paying tax won't be a problem. We've seen examples even here in Nigeria, we've seen examples. And in other climes, as you said also, it's criminal not to pay tax. You just mentioned the tax evasion stuff in England and so on. Why do we have problems implementing our tax laws? Why do we have, not implementing, enforcing our tax laws? Does it go down to that trust deficit we've been talking about all morning?
Well, I think the challenge has always been that we've always had alternative. There's never been, that, political will to drive taxation. And that's why, for instance, a surcharge will be introduced in 2007, and we are in 2015. We are talking about the fact that we have never implemented it. Why? Because we've always looked at other sources. We've always had other sources. But now, even those other sources are insufficient. Also, the problem is that we have never been ambitious. And I celebrate the current president, who is very ambitious, and you can see from his budget that he is very, very ambitious. You can see about some of the legacy projects that he's undertaking, that he is very ambitious about development. But I'm saying that as much as we're ambitious about development and revenue generation, we should also be ambitious about accountability. We should not be clever by half and with our tongue in the cheek and pretend as if the people don't understand what is going on. Because, for instance, the union who are saying that do not implement, they understand what's going on. Look at, for instance, what has happened with our refinery. This is this same union who came to tell us that the refineries are working. Are the refineries working? Are the refineries working? No, I mean, we're just fooling around. We're just fooling around. So we need to exactly know where we're going and hold ourselves accountable to where we're going. And like I said, we cannot just go about revenue. We need to be ambitious about revenue. We need to be ambitious about development. We need to be ambitious, so that we can provide leadership for the continent. But more importantly as well, we need to be ambitious about accountability. And, reassure Nigerians that we are using the money the most efficient way. And the way we are going to reassure them is by making sure that the mechanism, as much as it is available for revenue generation, it is also available for accountability.
All right, Mr. Elomo, because of our time.
I think
because of our time, let me quickly squeeze in this question. You've raised the issue about the vulnerable being taken care of in terms of voucher, but I would doubt how that is going to go because of requisite data that we need to ensure that this is done. But I don't know whether this raises a distributional question in terms of if the federal government will be the one to collect this 5% tax. What about the state? Because it's not like federal government versus the state. To take care of the federal roads, where do you now leave the state? Could that not lead to legal or fiscal friction very quickly?
Well, that provision is actually very clear. When you collect the 5%, 40% of the accrual will go to the federal government, to FEMA, to maintain road infrastructure and all of that. And then 60% will then be distributed, among states. So it is actually a clear provision. So except if the federal government and the state government now want to redesign the distribution, but it's something that is very, 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 very clear. And that will help with, for instance, internal roads maintenance and all of the states and local government roads. Also, is that the local government, the roads that the local government are responsible for, forms about more than 60% of the road networks in the country. Incidentally, they don't have the resources. That's why the roads to your street and my street, are in the shape they're in.
The shape they are right now. Okay.
But, at the end of the day, we've said a lot on the show, but if there's anything I'll say is that, of course, the government is supposed to, and, it's the right for you to pay tax, and the government uses the money, to make sure that roads and everything are clear. But we should also encourage people to pay tax because they are supposed to pay tax. It's a criminal offense not to pay tax. So please do pay your tax. Thank you so much, Mr. Elomo. Great submissions there. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Do have a fantastic day.